Welcome to Survive the Script, a podcast where we combine our love for horror movies and RPGs to see whether or not we could survive this horror movie. Today we're taking a deep dive into the Thanksgiving-themed slasher film called Thanksgiving. Who would have expected such a name? Before we begin, just want to remind our listeners, please give us a like, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, all that good stuff. Be more important, share this podcast. That's the biggest thing you can do with your friends and family, especially at Thanksgiving time. Time to be with family and to get a great commentary about a family movie like Thanksgiving.
That is one of the words I would use to describe this movie. As a family movie.
Well, with me always is my co-host, Kylie. Kylie, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. We are recording this in October, so officially in spooky season, and looking forward to the Thanksgiving horrors that lie ahead. But more importantly, I've been watching some good stuff. What about you? What have you been watching?
Well, let's see. Also in preparation for the Halloween festivities, I've been trying to watch a few more horror films and whatnot. One of them was one that came out a couple years ago. I'm not sure if you'd seen it, called Totally Killer. It's on Amazon Prime. Honestly,
I've heard of it.
Honestly, I did not realize I was sleeping on this movie. It was actually pretty good.
Okay.
Not like, oh, it's a cinematic masterpiece, but in terms of just being like an enjoyable piece of like entertainment to watch, yeah, it was great. It had some 80s stuff to it, which is, I feel like it's never like it's a safe option, but yeah, a little bit of 80s in it. It was a horror comedy, lead more toward the comedy side. It was a good time, and it really spent a lot of time making fun of the whole contrast between society now versus society like 40 years ago. So yeah, just overall, I would say it was pretty good and worth a watch.
Nice. Okay.
What about you? Any horror films so far that you have?
Of course.
Which one have you seen?
I've been digesting plenty of horror. Lots of bad and terrible things. Some pretty good things. I will say so far the highlight of our Halloween watch list, which if you follow me on Letterboxd, you can see everything I've been watching this spooky season and beyond. I'll make sure to link that below for if anybody wants to keep in touch with me on Letterboxd. I have been watching the Child's Play / Chucky franchise. We've only gone through the first two so far, but this Chucky as a character scared me insanely as a child. I would see a picture of him and like have nightmares about Chucky for weeks. So last year, I saw Child's Play, the original one, on the airplane for the first time, and I was like, wow, this is actually really good. So this year, Joshua and I have been going through the Child's Play / Chucky franchise. We've gone through the first two, and I'm really into it. I feel like Chucky is eventually just kind of going to become like a smaller version of Freddy Krueger, where he just yells and swears a lot and goes after children. Except, the only difference is that he's not in the dreamscape. Yeah, and I'm kind of into it, honestly. It's been really fun. And then on the television side, of course, nobody's surprised to hear that I'm watching Gilmore Girls religiously. It's
so
a rewatch.
Surprised to hear that you're watching Gilmore Girls.
Of course. It's not very horror-like of me, but it is like that time of year where the Gilmore Girls itch begins and you have to turn on Gilmore Girls or you will implode to the la la la's that would be playing in your head otherwise.
I have no idea what that means, and I think I'll keep it that way.
You would love Gilmore Girls. You would love Kirk. He's so special. I'm not gonna say anything, but I love Kirk, but you would relate to him. You'd appreciate his quirks.
Well, maybe we'll have to watch it together at some point.
Yeah, I have a Gilmore Girls themed cookbook, so there you go. We'll cook and watch Gilmore Girls. That's the only way I can get you to do anything.
Easiest way to my heart is through cooking.
To cooking, Thanksgiving is another time of the year that cooking is its own marathon. And that is our film for this series, We are doing Thanksgiving 2023. So, Nick, do you have like a solid summary on this film?
Indeed, I do. So, Thanksgiving is a slasher film directed by Eli Roth based on a fake trailer he made in 2007. The story begins with a chaotic Black Friday sale in Plymouth, Massachusetts that ends in a deadly riot. 1 year later, a masked killer inspired by Thanksgiving folklore starts hunting down those responsible for the previous year's tragedy.
Hmm.
So, delivering gruesome and
Wait, we
creative
gotta say the
killings.
tagline. The tagline is so good.
Yes.
There will be no
this year-
leftovers.
And this year, there will be
There will
no
be
leftovers.
no leftovers. Dun dun dun. So,
Oh my gosh.
I'll do a brief introduction to this one before we dive into it too deeply. This film was released November 17th, 2023. The budget for the film was $15 million, and it grossed $46.5 million, $31.9 million in the US and Canada, and then $14.6 million in the territories. This film finished fourth in the box office opening weekend, which I have to mention because it's actually kind of impressive. It came out the same week as Hunger Games, Songbirds and Snakes, The Marvels, and the most recent Trolls movie. So it actually did have a decent amount of competition the week that it was coming out, especially compared to Hunger Games. So finishing fourth is nothing to frown about.
What I'm hearing you say, Kylie, is the audacity of this film to think it can compete with all of these other big movies. How dare it?
No, you're good. I understand entirely. How dare they compete with the greatness that is the Hunger Games, etc. So this film was distributed by TriStar Pictures, whose parent organization is Sony. In the last couple of years, TriStar/Sony has come out with The Book of Clarence, Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody, Matilda the Musical. So they've come out with like a very different genre of things compared to Thanksgiving. So it makes sense that this movie did so well because it's very, very different than everything else that they've had coming out. The film was written and directed, co-written, let me clarify. This film was directed and co-written by Eli Roth, who directed Green Inferno, Cabin Fever, and Borderlands. More on him and his co-writer, Jeff Rendell, the other writer, later. So, a little bit more about this film. Awards and nominations, there wasn't a whole lot going on. They were nominated for Best Horror Film, though, among the Las Vegas Society, the Phoenix Film Society, etc. But they did win the Canada Sync Award for the Best Sync Soundtrack for a feature, which was kind of interesting. I will say the sound design in the film was pretty cool. This film already has a sequel in the works, according to an announcement made by Eli Roth, and it will be coming out around November 2025. Okay, so that clearly tells me how you felt about this movie. Nick, how do you think other people felt? What do you think the tomato meter and audience score was for this movie?
Okay. Well, I vaguely recall looking at the tomato score at one point, and I remember being shocked at how big of a score it got. But I don't remember the exact number, so I'm just gonna go with something I feel like is ridiculous. 84%.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you nailed
it.
For tomato meter, it was 84% exactly.
Okay. That was what I thought I saw.
Okay. Slay.
No.
Okay, go for it for the audience.
Shouldn't be
You're on a high. Go for it. You're on a high note. Go for it for the audience.
For the audience score? Okay, this one I definitely don't know. So, please, audience, please don't be bigger. I'm going to say 63. 63%?
Your own bias really is getting in the way. The audience score for Thanksgiving 2020 was 80%.
What? For this film?
For this film, 80%. 80% of people liked it.
We're going to get into it later.
YouTube, Nick is knuckle biting right now to hold himself back.
We're going to get into it later, but oh my gosh, do I have some problems with this film.
Dude, same. Okay, I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, yeah. Okay, let's hold off just a little bit longer. Let's let the tension continue to rise with our thoughts and opinions. But Letterboxd are fancy film fanatics. The ones that think they are better than everybody because they have a Letterboxd account and they have an obscure French movie as their top 4 to show how intellectual they are. What do you think
Are
they
you just talking about yourself, Kylie?
As? No, I have like 80s classics as my top 4. So it's not me. I am talking about myself in that I am pretentious enough to have a Letterboxd, but no, I'm not cool enough to have like a foreign film as my top 4. Sorry.
Okay. Letterboxd score. I think I'm going to ride... Yeah, I think I'm going to ride the pattern here, and I'm just going to say 4 out of 5. That equates to about 80%. No?
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're wrong. It was a 3 out of 5. So your gut instinct is a lot closer to what Letterboxd audiences thought about the movie.
I will take that loss gracefully, because it means that there's still hope in this world. That people know what a bad movie is when they see it.
Okay. He's throwing it out of the gate there. Okay, let's hear what a couple of the other Letterboxd users thought of this movie. Esau gave it a 4 out of 5. They said, yeah, maybe the killer killed people, but at least he fed the cat and gave that cat a little head scratch. All's forgiven. Mm-hmm. Neon, who gave it a 3 out of 5, said Hannibal would add this to his watch list for sure. Movie Omen, who gave it a half star out of 5, said even slasher films are bad now.
You know what? He's got a fair point. It's tough to make a good slasher film these days.
It definitely is. Speaking of which, you want to make our own slasher film with monster movie trivia?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's do it. Bring it on. Bring it on. This is your week. You're not your week. Your time to bring in the questions.
My time to try to kill you the best I can. Okay. We'll start off with an easy one. Where does this film take place?
Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Ooh, you evaded the killer with that one. So for audiences who don't know, monster movie trivia, Nick has 3 chances to get the answer right. Every answer that he gets wrong results in a slash from the killer. If you're slashed 3 times, you're dead. So continue to play along with us, see if you can keep up, and see if you can survive Mr. John Carver. Okay, so where was this film filmed for question number 2?
Outside of the movie, Kylie? How dare you? I'm going to say... Can I be vague and say New England? I feel like that's vague.
You can be as vague as you want to be.
As vague as I want to be. Okay.
I'm just kidding. You need to at least state a state or a country. A country and a state would be preferred.
Okay. I'm going to say Virginia. No. I changed my answer. Boston, Massachusetts.
And with that, the killer delivers 1 slash right across Nick's spleen. Ugh. This film was filmed in Ontario, Canada.
Every time. Gotta learn.
It's a safe answer at this point that if it was somewhere that was filmed like in the mountains, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be Canada. A lot of stuff is filmed in Canada. What is the name of the person who the masks were made in honor of? Who is this?
There we go. John Carver. This I know.
Good job. All right, so you evaded the slash with that one. Question number 4. Right. Who is the real John Carver?
Well, you mean like historically? Who is John Carver? Yeah. Or who's the man behind the mask?
Historically.
Historically, John Carver was a pilgrim he was one of the first to find, he basically founded Plymouth, Massachusetts. And that is as much as I'll say.
Okay, so technically, I have to give you a slash because he is the first governor of Plymouth, Massachusetts.
What? But was he a pilgrim?
I will give you a half slash. I will give you a half. So this time the killer goes around, bonks you on the head for half a slash.
Oh, gosh. Sorry that I was only stating facts.
Sorry that you were only partially right. All right, question number 5. What is the store name? In fictional
Right, Mark.
store name from the movie. Good job. Number 6. What is the username of the killer's Instagram account?
Social media, my next weakness. John Carver.
You were so close. I feel like that's another half. It's at the John Carver.
Oh my gosh, this.
So you will take another
Celebrities.
half slash, another bonk on the head, bam! And you have officially 2 slashes with 1 slash and 2 bonks on the head.
Okay.
Now, number 7. Name another Eli Roth film as a director.
As a director, I'm gonna say Cabin Fever.
You are correct. Congratulations. Number 8.
Go.
What was Eli Roth's most popular acting role? Because he's an actor as well. Been in some really big things.
I mean, I guess this is gonna be my personal bias here. But he had a role in Inglourious Bastards. Yeah. It's like Danny Danowitz or something like that. I don't remember the real name of the character. Just his nickname.
No, you had it. You had it.
Danny Danowitz.
It's Donnie.
Donnie.
Donnie Donowitz.
Donnie Donowitz. I remember something like that.
I'll let that pass because that's kind of a hard name. So you're good. I will allow you to evade the slash with that one because I know this next one's going to get you out. What was the real name of the cat in the movie?
Who even likes cats?
I love cats.
It was a terrible musical. It's a terrible pet.
It's a terrible musical. Talk about a real horror film.
I feel like we always bash on cats.
It's terrible.
The name of the cat was... Mm-hmm. Can I get mercy and give 2 possible choices? Either Whiskers or Snowflake.
Both are wrong. You have been slashed. Your final slash. So as Nick is dying from being slashed 3 times in Monster Movie Trivia, the answer is Tonic. The cat's name is Tonic. The same cat also starred in the 2019 Pet Sematary.
Who names their cat Tonic? What does that even mean?
It's a cute name. Anyways, as Nick is
what does it mean?
From the grave, it's like a gin and tonic. It's a liquid. It's like a tonic. I can't think of it. We've been recording for like 4 hours. I can't think of anything else. But as a bonus for the final question for audiences and for Nick, tell me about a scene that was a reference to another horror film. Because there were a lot of interesting film references in this. It was cool that the director, Eli, was obviously a big fan of horror. There are a lot of references to other horror films. So give me a reference.
I truly don't know. So I'm going to go with my gut and say the trampoline scene. It has to be with that.
Okay.
You know which one I'm talking about? The trampoline scene?
I do know what you're talking about. There actually is a cheerleader who gets killed in another film that is kind of a reference. But I mean, if anything, it's closer to a reference to the trailer that he made like 15 years earlier. But that's, like the trampoline scene was written to be also a reference to Cutting Class, where a cheerleader was killed on a trampoline. But in that film, it was a male cheerleader who was killed. And as we know, based on Eli Roth's, his trailer for this film back in 2007, he pretty much does the exact same cheerleading kill scene. So this has been on his mind to do a kill like this for a long time. Yeah, there's actually a lot of interesting other horror references in this movie. Is there anything that you saw or thought of when you were watching it and you're like, hey, that reminds me of another film?
Honestly, no, not really. I didn't catch those. What was it? I didn't even know when I was first watching it that this was a reference to a trailer that was a fake trailer that was made in another movie. We'll talk a bit more about it. I feel like we're dancing around it, but
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I did not catch any references. Maybe it's just maybe I was just looking at the movie in too much disgust to even clock any of that.
well, okay. So you obviously are disgusted by this film. Tell us more. Share your thoughts and opinions on this movie.
All right, here we go. Finally into it. Hated this film. Hated.
Really? You were the one that
Yes,
suggested it too.
I know, and I didn't realize just how bad it was gonna be. Where do I start with this? So there were a couple things. I was digging deep first to find some things that I might actually like about this film. So I'll go through
Okay.
that really quick. First one I have is it was bold enough to try something that was not already popular, meaning a Thanksgiving filmed horror movie. And well, I know that certain other movies have tried to do the same subgenre. It's
Mm-hmm.
not popular enough yet for it to be an imitation, to consider an imitation of anyone else's work. So I will say it was bold in trying to break into the zeitgeist
Mm.
in this way.
Okay.
I also liked how overly dramatic a lot of the injuries were. A simple trip and fall turns into your death. Okay, that's
Getting
always.
smashed in half by the dumpster bin, your body being like sliced in
That one
half.
was the worst. Oh my gosh! Thank you for reminding me. The dumpster bin. Oh my gosh! I saw that. I was like, wait a second. That's not how dumpsters work. I was like, are dumpster lids that heavy? I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or, getting killed by someone ramming you in the head with a shopping cart.
I mean, the craziest, probably the one that I cringed at the most, that gave me an actual visceral ick, was her scalp being torn off and
Ugh.
getting like pursued by the shopping cart. That honestly, like, I didn't like a lot of this film, but I will say the kills were very creative. I'm not going to forget the
Yeah.
kills anytime soon. I will say,
Yeah.
like, similar to what you said, going into the zeitgeist of having interesting kills, they definitely had them. Even if they aren't the most realistic,
Hmm.
neither was Freddy's mom getting yeeted through the, like, glass window door at the very end of Nightmare on Elm Street. They got that. I
Uh,
will give him that. Like, it was, the kills are very creative.
Very true. Very true. I think for me, because you were talking about your most cringe scene, funny enough, the most cringe thing for me wasn't a death, but rather that scene where we see the crowd running through the store and someone tramples
Mm-hmm.
on that baseball player. Was it Bobby's arm? And his arm
Yeah.
breaks. When I see the snap, I'm like, ugh, I can't. Ugh.
Mm.
That looked too realistic to me. I was like, nope, nope. But anyway,
How that was crazy.
let's see. Just like you, I like the clever techniques for killing people. Also, the clever ways in which the killer hides his location. I was like, oh,
Mm.
how interesting. You put up a phone and recorded a monitor. I'm not sure that would work in real life, but it's still creative. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, I
How
will say
interesting.
the aspects of technology that they played into it were both a little bit cringy, but also kind of cool. Like the whole live streaming concepts and the like basic motive of the villain to make a movie of his own and kill people. I do think that was interesting, and I think the more that we become obsessed with technology, I could see a lot more slashers revolving around technology and social media specifically. I do think that's a space that hasn't been played in a whole lot, and I don't think it was executed perfectly, but I do think they did attempt to tap into multiple untapped genres, being like Thanksgiving, where I did look up there are some other Thanksgiving horror movies, but they usually are starring like a turkey going to kill everybody and stuff like that, like very very B-C list horror. This is probably the first A-list horror, and I say that in quotations because it did really well in the box office. It's gotten a sequel. It was distributed by big people, had big names in it. For an A-list horror movie, slasher, all in quotations, it did do an effective job of tapping into untapped subgenres like Thanksgiving and continuing to pursue the social media side of the horror universe, because we've definitely had some horror surroundings around social media, but this time it was interesting how they played with it for sure. I don't think the story was all that strong or the acting
No,
per
and
se.
definitely not. I was about to go into what it is I actually hated, and definitely acting is up there. Everyone's thick Boston accent, that was terrible. That was it. All it did was make me laugh. The
Yeah.
Patrick Dempsey and his terrible motive as a killer. I was trying to explain this to my wife earlier this week, and
Mhm.
I was like, this guy, he's upset because he got away with having an affair with his best friend's wife. Is essentially what he's done, what he's doing. This guy got off scot clean, which obviously I don't condone,
But she
you know,
died.
but she died, so either he truly loves her, or he could not love her. In which case, why is he doing this anyways? Because you just got
Mhm.
off scot free, my dude. No one knew you were having an affair.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was one of those classic slasher movie motives where at the end they're like, we got to make a reason for this character to be this bad guy. And
Hmm.
like, let's just add this like twisted motive of like, oh, they're having an affair and she was pregnant with my child. So it does feel like they were very quick to be like, hey, we're just going to throw this storyline in to wrap it up nice and neat and nice and neat in quotations, because to the audience, we were left with like, really? Like, that's all we get? It would have been so much more
Yeah,
interesting if it had been one of the boyfriends, or if it had been like, I think if there had been more of a connection to, and I will say I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be him. Like, they had a couple of good fakes, but the reasoning behind why they made it him was not satisfying as an audience member. It was more like, okay,
yeah.
so you chose the route of like love and a baby to cover up like this mystery we were supposed to be unwinding as an audience. And
Well, was she pregnant with his baby? I don't think she was. Was she?
yeah, she was pregnant with his baby. That was the other
Oh my
kicker
gosh.
that they had to add in there. Was like,
Okay,
as he
so then it
revealed at the very
changes.
end, was like, she was pregnant with my child.
Okay, that feels definitely something that was tacked on. It makes more sense than why he would be angry and upset. But I feel like the movie maybe needed to do the work of maybe just a couple more scenes or something that really established like there's some chemistry going on between these two characters. Because what we get in the
Mhm.
movie is just we get a 10-second little back and forth with Officer Newland and Mitch Connell's wife. I forget what her character's name was, and
Yeah.
it's basically just a man who's a cop and bakes. Oh my gosh, any woman would be lucky to have you, which that's not flirtatious.
Yeah,
That's
like,
just
you're
like, oh,
clearly
good for you.
single. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
So it was
it could have been
completely out
cute
of
if
left
they had
field.
had like, yeah, it would have been cute if they had had a couple more scenes together, or even some interesting conflict between his wife and her. Like, I think Eli Roth did say in an interview they're going away for a year, like not working really on anything else, to write the script for the sequel. And I'm really
Mm,
hoping that they come back with a sequel that's stronger in story, because I think that's the only thing that'll keep this as a quote unquote franchise or even sequel worthy going. Because right
mm.
now, like, as a viewer, you and I can both agree that I think we are dissatisfied by the end. We are just like, okay, well, you kind of just threw this at left field at us and we have to accept, because he was in love with this person and they were going to have a baby,
Apparently,
that it's justified that he was the killer, and because this poor girl was trying to help him solve his case, she was kind of roped into it. I mean, yeah, I think with this one, because it wasn't very strong story wise or acting wise, it's also, like you said, the Boston accents. It's hard to put talented actors in a position to do like a fairly challenging dialect,
true.
especially if they're being given writing material that's maybe not the strongest. And again, like, it's a solid slasher movie. Like, if this had been come out in the 80s, We hadn't really known about all this technology yet. It would have slayed in the 80s. Everyone would have loved this movie, even in probably the early 2000s. But I think now, as a society, we're a lot more aware of certain things, and like slashers were really, really big in the 80s, and they're not as big now. It's hard to make them successful. And they did a great job making it successful. But I think there were audiences like you and I who were dissatisfied in the story, and we wanted more from the story. Because I think it had a lot of potential. It was a cool niche, and they played with some really cool aspects with the modern day of social media and playing with those themes of consumerism, kind of like Dawn of the Dead, that they could have done something really, really unique. And I do feel like they kind of chose a very slasher movie path and just chose like the easiest path for them to follow.
So, because you were talking about being dissatisfied with certain aspects of the film, let me ask you this part, because this was one more thing I was dissatisfied with, and I want to know if you agree with me here. Were you happy with the way our killer was caught?
I'm trying to even remember how he was caught.
So it was, to me, it was totally flimsy. It was ridiculous. Basically, what happens is Officer Newland, he walks back into a room after he left Jess, away with her thoughts for a little bit. After she thinks that he got the actual killer, Bobby, not the actual killer, who they thought the killer was. And he comes back and she notices that he's got some plants, like on his pants. And according to the movie's logic, she's like, oh, I see that stuff on his pants. That stuff is in a field that I was running in away from the killer earlier. And now I know he's the killer. And, maybe that's a little bit you could lean on, sure. But then Patrick Dempsey looks down, notices what's on his pants, and then he just completely confesses to everything he's done.
And then she was live streaming him the whole time, which was smart.
Well, no.
I thought that was a cool character choice for her to be like, I'm just, as a true Gen Z or millennial character, I'm going to just record all this.
What I'm getting at is, it seemed like he folded too fast. He could have been like, oh yeah, I was checking out the field. He could have come up with any excuse for why maybe there was some of that. But for someone to be like, oh no, he's clearly the killer. Look at what's on his pants. Yeah. That would never hold up anywhere.
No, that's true. I think they were obviously at that third act of the movie. They had already done the fake, and they were like, okay, well, we need to find a quick and efficient way to get to the finish line for this. So I think, if anything, it was a choosing to very quickly close the story instead of taking the time. It wasn't like an investigation movie. It was a slasher. So I think that's why they did it that way. But I agree with you. It's like, it kind of goes back to my point of not really liking this foundation of the writing behind the story, is because it felt like it was very tropey. That's kind of what they chose it to be. It's a slasher film, so they intentionally added a lot of tropes and didn't add a clean story per se, or like exceptionally exciting acting choices from any of the performers as a result. So I agree with you in that. And like, again, back to the positive. There are some cool parts of this movie. To the positive. There are some really interesting kills that I haven't seen before. And, you and I have watched our fair share of horror films, and it was cool to see kills and torture that was outside the box without being just like torture porn. It was outside the box without crossing that line, I think.
I will say I was surprised for the parade scene when it turns out the killer is not hiding behind a John Carver mask, but behind a creepy clown mask, which that would be my first suspect immediately.
Normally,
but the fact that he wasn't in his regular costume, I was like, oh, that makes sense. He knows that they're looking for someone in that specific mask, so be in a different costume. How genius!
Yeah. No, that part was really cool.
to do a clean cut in one swoop on someone's head like that. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy must be so
That's
strong.
another reference to the trailer. I don't know if you've seen the full trailer, but that
I
does
did
happen in the
actually.
trailer. Yeah,
Yes.
if
And so
anybody has
maybe,
not seen the trailer, we have it linked below in the description. It is wild, and it's basically a summarized version of this movie. I feel like that's the best way to sum it up. It really is
yeah. And
very, very accurate.
so maybe that's a good segue for getting into some of the facts about the movie that were kind of interesting, like the origins. Is that something you're ready to talk about?
Yeah, I would
So,
love to talk about the origins.
so I had no clue. I had never seen the movie Grindhouse, so it makes sense that I have no idea about this. But it's kind of
Mhm.
cool that this movie was originally a fake trailer in another movie, and then they decided, let's make a movie about this. Like, let's actually do it. So I
Yeah.
did briefly watch the actual trailer just so I, had that in my mind. And it
Mhm.
was it was kind of cool and satisfying to know that's happening. Like it feels like a whole full circle thing going on. What
Yeah,
did you think of it?
absolutely.
Have you ever seen the movie Grindhouse?
I've not seen the movie Grindhouse, but I did watch the full trailer. And I thought it was really cool to see this vision that Eli Roth came up with like 15 years ago. He's actually in the trailer to become a full feature film. I do think that was cool. And that's one of the like highlights of this film. And when that trailer came out, people kind of went mad for it because they were like, this is really cool. But Eli Roth and Jeff Randall, they're the two writers on this film. And I didn't realize when researching this that they were best friends since like kindergarten. They've been watching horror together since they were preteens, and they have been conceptualizing this idea of wanting to make a horror film about Thanksgiving because they grew up in Massachusetts, where Thanksgiving is a really, really big deal. So I mean, I loved the idea of them watching horror together, creating short horror films, which is something they actually did. I've linked below a few of their home movies from when they were kids, making short horror films together using their dad's camera. I it reminds me a lot as a kid. Like I used to do that all the time with my parents' old camcorder. I wasn't allowed to watch horror movies, so I had to get really, really creative. But I would do something similar and take the concepts of horror and try to make it into something. So it was cool conceptually that Eli Roth and Jeff Randall got together after all these years of being friends and collaborators to actually create this horror film. Just from a trailer and a dream, basically.
Actually, Kylie, because you mentioned that they're both from Massachusetts, it reminded me of this little fun fact I saw.
Mhm.
Completely, this little fun fact is about to blow a hole in the entire movie. You ready for this?
Oh yeah.
Apparently, stores are actually not allowed to be open, like by law, on Thanksgiving in Massachusetts.
Oh no, it blows a hole in the movie. Right Mart would not have been
Entire
open.
hole right
None
in
of
the
this would
film.
have happened.
I know. Which makes me think, does Eli Roth really know that much about his home state, Massachusetts? Hmm.
Well, I get it though. I mean, if they're making a film about Thanksgiving, they're going to want it to take place on Thanksgiving. It's weird if they're like, we're making a movie called Thanksgiving and it happens the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Like, that'd be a
Hmm.
little odd.
What if you just called it the
Actually,
Tuesday before Thanksgiving?
like Tuesdays with Maury, but Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Tuesday
You know what? Maybe
before
we'll
Thanksgiving.
be into theaters soon. Actually, so Eli Roth, another little fun fact about him, one of his favorite films, at least the film that he grew up watching that led him to want to be a director, was Alien, which we actually did a series on.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to link it below. But Alien was his gateway film to be like, hey, I want to work in this field and I want to make this. Which actually, the first film that he did as a director was Cabin Fever back in 2002, and it had a 1.5 budget, and he raised that money with his family and friends basically. And the film actually was in a bidding war at the Toronto Film Festival, which, as most film buffs know, it's an enormous festival. Very, very important for getting your film out there. And it eventually was won by Lionsgate, which doubled all the investors' money who invested into the film.
Ooh.
So that's kind of like a cute little coming of age story for this director as he was starting out in the industry.
Not just that, but a
Yeah,
big
it's
success. Oh my gosh.
a
Doubling your money.
huge success. Yeah, like right out of the gate too, which is insane.
Maybe we
So,
need to watch Cabin
Nick,
Fever.
honestly, yeah, let us know in the comments if we should watch Cabin Fever, because I've never seen it. I will say I like Eli Roth's style, because I've seen Green Inferno. He's definitely known for doing some like horrendously gory things and cabin themed things. So in the feelings of getting things to be gory and horrendous and horrifying, was there anything within the special effects that you really enjoyed, Nick? Was there like features that you enjoyed, or were there things that you thought were CGI or practical?
Honestly, watching the film, I didn't feel like anything was CGI. That would be,
Mm-hmm.
that would be my suspicion. It looked like everything was pretty practical. I would say maybe the most interesting effect. I thought it was completely gross and disgusting, but
Yeah.
it'd be interesting
So
to
it's
know how it
effective.
happened. It'd be interesting to know how it happened. Was the scene
Mm-hmm.
inside of the where they're doing the whole parade, and that scene after the clown like stops the car carrying the float and everything, and when the car hits the brakes, the boat on the back crashes through, explodes the guy's
Mm-hmm.
head. I was like, oh my gosh, how? I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be like fake head and just good timing, but still, like it looked clean. It looked like you couldn't tell. It was nice.
It was so good. I actually really liked that too. And like you said, I did look up a little bit about special effects because I was curious. I mean, like you said, a lot of it was practical. There were some visual effects added in, which was led by an entire team, but they did do a lot of practical and makeup effects and pre-visualization where they would use frame forge to plan out some of those riot scenes, because as you saw there are a lot of people running in the background, a lot of people jumping and flying over things, and making sure to do that safely is really, really hard. Speaking from past experience, as someone who's worked on sets where sometimes things don't go right when you're trying to choreograph everything to go right. But a lot of the practical effects and makeup was led by Adrienne Moreau, and Adrienne Moreau is a Academy Award winning makeup effects artist. So they're known for working on The Whale, Scream 6, Megan, First Omen, and The Exorcism 2024. From the behind the scenes footage that I watched, it looked like they were using a lot of fake people that they built. And they looked really, really real. Like I was watching the details that Adrian was painting using someone's photo to paint onto this fake head that they were putting on the dinner table. So I think probably my favorite part of this whole movie was just the dedication to the gore and to the practical effects, because everything looked really, really cool and really crisp. It wasn't insane. And for the art department, actually, the biggest part of the film for them, they did say, was the graphics, because there were so many personalized logos and designs that they had to make, because everything was taking place in the small town and all the banners had to be personalized and stuff. But back to the grandfather real quick. They did say that was the most expensive shot in the whole movie. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I guess you could see why. Like, so you have to break glass, you have to break this probably rubber dummy's head, and then having fake blood spray on these children next to you. It seems like it would be a massive production that you probably would have to do at least more than once to get it right. So doing that
Yeah.
same setup over and over is probably really, really expensive.
How many takes do you think it would have? They would have had?
I have no idea. I feel like they could have done I don't know. I feel like there could have been some sort of break in between the shot too, to make it safer for like the kids in the car. So it could have actually been two separate shots that were kind of fused together. But honestly, I don't know. Like, I would have to imagine they would at least do they did it primarily from one angle. So like 3 to 4 to 5 shots at least, to like just make sure that everything looked good and But also, it could have been one of those situations where because it was so expensive, they only had one chance to do it right. So I honestly have no idea. It was a really cool shot and moment to watch, though. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the film. There were definitely multiple parts that Eli Roth and Jeff Rendell definitely take credit for. Of like, my jaw dropped multiple times, but it was due to the gore, not the story. So
then, what would you say was your favorite kill in this film?
I think, okay, I will stick to what I mentioned earlier that I did really like. There's a difference between like favorite and like, ugh, like the one that made me viscerally nauseous. The one that made me nauseous was the scalp being ripped off the woman's head by the shopping cart. That was the grossest and probably my favorite in that way. But my favorite in regards to the creative kill has got to be the turkey. Like, dolling up that woman and putting her in the oven like the turkey. That was cool.
That one made me so sad. Mostly because I could just like all I could keep thinking about is like how slow that has got to be, that type of death, and what's probably happening to her skin. Like my mind couldn't get out of like, oh, this is the pain she's probably feeling. How terrible is this going to be? Oh my gosh!
I did think
and then
about
when
that
they actually show her all dressed up on the table. They show her all dressed up on the table, and he does the little slice into her.
Well, that part made me nauseous, though, too. Okay, so do you have a favorite kill then?
But yeah, no, my favorite kill was the boat scene, the boat through the head, because it was surprising, and I mean it looked clean, but also the turkey mascot getting his head cut clean off. I was like, oh my gosh, that, because I was impressed that the killer actually thought, you know what, they're going to be looking for me in a John Carver mask. Let me just change my costume because that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't make
honestly,
sense that you
that
would
was smart of
be an evil clown in a Thanksgiving parade, but you know what? I'll give him points anyway.
There's gotta be evil clowns. Since there's a sequel coming out, how do you want to see like a Thanksgiving themed creative kill? If you could come up with one that could be in the sequel, what would it be? And audiences, please take a part of this. Let us know in the comments what kind of creative kill you want to see that's Thanksgiving themed in the next movie.
Probably something to do with pies. Like,
that's what I was thinking too.
Like, you know what? I'm just thinking of Sweeney Todd now. Mrs. Lovett's meat pies.
I was thinking killer clowns. I was thinking like acid pies or like poisonous pies.
Like someone's body part got baked into like a pumpkin pie or something, and now someone else has to eat it. That would just be gross. Or let's see, what else would be creative? What about? I'm trying to think. What's like a fun Thanksgiving tradition? Everyone does it.
Ooh, getting like impaled by the wishbone would be gnarly.
Kylie, I think you and I are on the same brainwave. I was thinking something to do with a wishbone.
Like if instead of breaking it apart, you like impale it into their trachea, that'd be kind of cool.
That would be disturbing.
Sorry, I mean, early phases of trying to write a horror short, so maybe I'm thinking about killing people more creatively than usual.
Maybe. Oh my gosh. You might actually be good at this.
My brain is very dark.
Let's see. Okay. So
you could do like boiling gravy too. You could pour like hot boiling gravy on somebody.
Somebody falls into a vat of boiling gravy.
Exactly. Like 5,000 pounds
of gravy.
Remember me.
Hand comes up from the top of the pot as he sinks down.
Exactly. Okay, so pies, wishbones, gravy. We're giving free ideas for the sequel. Okay, so one of the things.
I got it.
You got it.
I got it. Like a turkey hunt, but really they're hunting people. So it's really just guy coming around with the musket. But the creative part would be that the killer has gone to the painstaking effort of kidnapping people and letting them roam around in a forest, and he starts hunting them down. But he dresses them up like turkeys.
That is the premise of the hunt. It is really it's good. They're not dressed up. But you should watch The Hunt. It's pretty interesting. I enjoyed it. There were some creative kills, and you'd appreciate. It's very much that premise, but they're not dressed up like turkeys, which that would be cool. Because I think the humiliation factor is, I think, what makes the turkey scene, the human turkey scene, so satisfying is that the person is just utterly humiliated before they die. So that would be something to keep in mind. You could suffocate on like rat cranberry sauce. You can. I'm coming up with way too many ideas over here. But I
All
like that
food themed.
conceptually. You should check out The Hunt. I think you'd like it for that reason.
Maybe.
But
Okay.
one last thing I wanted to talk about. Clearly in this film, obviously Patrick Dempsey is like the main star that they got for this, because a lot of these other folks, they're stars as well, but like they don't have the McDreamy household name. But they also have influencers in this film, like Addison Rae. And I wanted to get your opinion on influencers in film, because I have a lot of opinions, but I wanted you to kick us off.
Well, to be honest, I didn't really care a lot. If you were to tell me beforehand, I think you did tell me beforehand that one of these people in the movie was an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as long as their acting was fine, then that's okay. I mean, I could see from a business perspective why you do it, but I think it's the same thing where sometimes a studio wants a specific actor because they have some type of recognition that will pull in an audience. So I don't think it's really any different than that. Where it becomes a problem is if that person's not a good actor. And I think the same is true and has been a problem with other actors in other films. So I don't really have an issue with it. In fact, it's kind of nice because I don't really know a lot of influencers. So it's like, oh, cool. I get to see this person in this new person in a role that, I've never seen in another movie before. So I don't have to think about another movie while I'm, watching them like I do sometimes with Marvel movies. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's the guy from Charlie Bone. That's the guy from Tropic Thunder. That's Chris Evans, the guy from Not Another Teen Movie.
That's a nice reference. I mean, so similar to you, I can see both sides. Like, as someone who now works on the more production than actory side, I see that, like, for example, Addison Rae signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix back in 2023 with her, at the time, 80 million TikTok followers. So it makes her a wanted commodity by studios because she brings in a massive audience. An audience that, honestly, like movie stars can't bring in nowadays. I've been listening to other podcasts, like Hollywood-themed podcasts, that movie stars are kind of fading in interest unless they're like big and interesting on social media as well. Because the younger generation, like Gen Alpha, they care more about influencers and old school movie stars. So I get why they did it, but as a former actor, it frustrates me as somebody who knows hundreds of talented actors who are trying to get their start, who have paid thousands of dollars to get their degree in theater, or thousands of dollars taking these like high-level acting classes, for them to be passed by somebody who got in because of their follower count. That is frustrating to me, but
yeah,
I see why they did it, and I don't think Addison put on a bad performance. I mean, she did.
Oh no, I thought they were all
bad.
So
given.
it was
they were all about the same level to me. I didn't see like nobody was noticeably good or bad. They were all kind of like the acting was all pretty much indifferent. But yeah, like I do see the frustration behind it because it does take away from other actors' opportunities. But I mean, again, that's not what studios are thinking about. They're thinking about the quickest way and the most efficient way to get money. And sometimes that is by hiring the Addison Raes of the world, the King David Bach, whatever his name is, and the Liza Koshis out there. It's hiring those people who are going to bring in a much larger audience, which is what we saw in the box office. They had a huge US profit because of Addison Rae, probably, and because of Patrick Dempsey. But
But
I mean, Patrick
also,
Dempsey would have brought in the older crowd.
yeah, Patrick Dempsey brought an older crowd for sure. But at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily anything a new problem per se, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've heard about it before in other horror films. Like let's take the movie Scream for example. Matthew Lillard, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm recalling this incorrectly, but he didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have any prior acting experience. He was just kind of there to
That
help
was
someone
because he was
else.
really talented, though. That's different. He was
Yeah,
talented and right for the role. That's,
but
I
still,
think
even if
there's a,
someone's talented to just show up and not even want to be going for the role and then suddenly be picked, like my point is that
that,
happens
yeah,
sometimes. You know,
that happens, but
people.
that's different than someone being chosen based on the amount of followers they have, which is a real thing. Like, there are times, even when I worked in casting or I was on the acting side, where either casting companies would ask me or I would be asking of other people how many followers they had on social media, because to a certain degree it does make an impact. It does impact your likability to a casting person. And again, it's not the end all be all, but it is a perk and a bonus if you perform well on social media and you have an audience there that is loyal and dedicated to you, especially if you have one like the size of a country like Addison Rae. So that's where I have to retort your Matthew Lillard there. Like, yes, Scream was his first film, but he was very talented and he was very good for the part, and he came in and he auditioned and did well. That's different than being told by a studio, oh, you have this many followers, we're going to have you be a part of the movie because of your social media impact.
Okay, well, I mean, I still think it's still the case. You know, when choosing between certain actors for a film, one actor gets picked over another, not because of talent, but because they just have a more popular name. And
Yeah,
maybe you have
I
an
mean, it does
example.
happen.
So I'm saying it's not necessarily a new problem. It's just now there's another avenue for that problem.
No, there's a new avenue of social media allowing that problem, because before it was a like you're a household name or you're related to somebody with a household name. It was more based on that type of nepotism, but this is different because it's based on how many people follow and acknowledge you on social media. And so, yeah, that's my soapbox. I'm getting off of my soapbox exhaustedly now, but I will say I get why they did it. The film probably would not have been as successful without it. But as we're winding down here, Nick, is there any last words you'd like to say to Thanksgiving 2023?
So long, and I think you've overstayed your welcome. Please don't come back.
Okay, slay. Love that. To Thanksgiving 2023, I really hope your sequel is better. I hope that the writing is tighter and the story is more interesting. I think that this franchise has a lot of potential, but I would love to see a more interesting story and more exciting acting choices in your sequel. That's pretty
Mm.
much it for me.
And don't make the one big name star, the killer. Honestly, watching the movie or looking back, I was like, oh, that makes it the obvious choice. That should have really made it easy to figure out that Patrick Dempsey was the killer because he was only the big name guy
Mm.
there. You,
No, I was just gonna add a fun fact onto that real quick. For every killer scene, John Carver mask scene, they had a different person stand in the mask and be directed by Eli Roth because he didn't want to make it too easy to predict somebody's body language and figure out who the killer is based on that. So he did
mm,
try to trick the audience and have different people play each killer scene, which I thought was kind of cool. That like
I think that's a
I did
smart
like
thing to
some of
do.
the yeah, like I liked the gore and some of the directing choices, but yeah, sequel please. Like stronger story, stronger acting choices would be amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on our Thanksgiving deep dive. Make sure to tune in 2 weeks for our RPG part 1, where we are going to see if we can survive against the killer that is John Carver in The Mask. So please stay tuned for that. Nick has written up a spicy, exciting RPG. And in the meantime, make sure to like and subscribe, share this movie with a friend, and let us know what creative kill in the comments that you would like to see in the sequel. All right, bye everybody.
Bye everyone.